Ukraine just carried out something so precise, so deeply penetrating, and so psychologically devastating that it may have shattered the illusion of Russian control over Crimea forever. This wasn't a frontline breakthrough. It wasn't a naval invasion. And it wasn't an attack on the Kerch Bridge. Ukraine struck one of the most protected missile installations in Crimea, a hardened Iskander complex built inside a Soviet-era nuclear-grade bunker buried deep underground, engineered to survive a direct nuclear hit. For years, Russia believed this was their ultimate sanctuary, a place where their most dangerous weapons could hide, untouchable, ready to strike deep into Ukraine at a moment's notice. Today, that sanctuary is gone. But the bunker strike was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. Because Ukraine is no longer trying to simply attack Crimea. It's trying to make Crimea impossible for Russia to hold. Crimea was never just a piece of land. It was Russia's strategic crown jewel, the unbreakable anchor of its entire southern flank. From this fortified peninsula, Russia controlled the Black Sea, projected naval power across the Mediterranean, and turned the entire region into a launching pad for long-range strikes. It served as the perfect forward base, a massive military citadel that gave Moscow dominance over critical shipping routes and a permanent threat against NATO's southern flank. More than that, Crimea was Putin's ultimate prestige symbol, the one territory he could never afford to lose. Losing Crimea would not just be a military defeat, it would be a personal and national humiliation. For Russia, this peninsula was the center of gravity of their entire operation in Ukraine. For decades, the Soviet Union had poured unimaginable resources into turning Crimea into an apocalyptic fortress. Deep underground bunkers carved into mountains, reinforced concrete structures designed to withstand direct nuclear blasts, vast tunnel networks, and hardened command centers that could survive even the worst scenarios of World War III. These weren't ordinary military bases. They were built with the paranoia and engineering genius of a superpower preparing for total war. Layers of protection, redundant systems, secret ammunition depots, and airfields shielded by natural geography and man-made defenses. Russia inherited this entire system and believed it had only grown stronger with modern upgrades. To them, Crimea wasn't just defensible, it was designed to survive the end of the world. At the heart of this system sat the Iskander missile complexes, Russia's most advanced short-range ballistic missiles. Mobile, incredibly accurate, and capable of carrying both conventional and nuclear warheads. From Crimea, these missiles could reach Kyiv in minutes, striking deep into Ukrainian territory with almost no warning. They represented everything Russia loved about its position, overwhelming firepower combined with near-perfect protection. As long as the Iskanders remained safe underground, Ukraine could never truly strike back. But history has shown one brutal truth. The greatest fortresses become the most dangerous liabilities the moment an enemy learns how to penetrate them. And that is exactly what Ukraine has begun to do. While Russia poured billions into fortifying its invincible peninsula, Ukraine was undergoing a far more dangerous transformation. For 4 brutal years, under constant bombardment, Ukrainian soldiers and engineers lived in a relentless laboratory of war. Every failed drone mission became a lesson. Every destroyed vehicle taught a new tactic. What began as desperate improvisation evolved into a sophisticated system of innovation. War itself became Ukraine's most powerful innovation engine. They didn't have the money, the missiles, or the manpower, so they built something more lethal: creativity under extreme pressure. Out of this crucible emerged weapons like the Firepoint FP2, a hybrid missile drone that changed the rules of the game. Small enough to be launched from mobile platforms, smart enough to evade radar, and powerful enough to penetrate reinforced concrete. Designed specifically to hunt deeply buried targets, the FP2 can slip through air defenses, dive into bunkers, and deliver its payload with surgical precision. It is not just a weapon. It is the physical embodiment of asymmetrical warfare, a cheap, intelligent system capable of neutralizing assets that cost the enemy hundreds of millions to build and protect. Ukraine didn't buy this technology. They created it while fighting for survival. This is the new reality of modern conflict. Traditional fortifications no longer guarantee safety. Massive concrete bunkers, once considered nuclear-proof, are now vulnerable to precision, low-cost systems that are difficult to detect and even harder to stop. The technological reversal is complete. The side with fewer resources but greater adaptability has begun to dictate the tempo of the war. But destroying that hardened Iskander bunker wasn't the real objective. It was merely proof of concept. The real plan is far more ambitious and far more terrifying for Russia. Ukraine didn't just damage the Russian Black Sea Fleet, they systematically dismantled its ability to operate from Crimea. Through relentless drone boat attacks, anti-ship missiles, and innovative sea drones, Ukraine forced Russia into a humiliating strategic retreat. The once dominant fleet, which used Sevastopol as its unchallenged home, has been largely pushed back to Novorossiysk. Major warships have been sunk, damaged, or forced into permanent defensive posture. What Russia once called maritime supremacy has become a shadow of its former self. The Black Sea, long considered a Russian lake, is now a contested killing zone where every Russian vessel moves under constant threat. With the fleet neutralized, Ukraine turned its attention to the sky. One by one, Russian radar stations and S-400 systems, the crown jewels of their air defense, began falling silent. Precision strikes using long-range drones and newly developed systems have created growing blind spots across the peninsula. These are not random hits. They are calculated removals of the fortress walls. With every destroyed radar and exhausted missile battery, Ukraine opens new air corridors over Crimea. The once impenetrable dome of protection is cracking, leaving Russian forces increasingly exposed from above. And now comes the most devastating stage, breaking the perception of safety itself. Ukraine is not merely targeting military hardware, it is systematically destroying the Russian sense of security. Strikes on command posts, ammunition depots, and rear area bases send one clear message to every Russian soldier, officer, and civilian settler in Crimea: you are no longer protected here. Even the civilians who moved to Crimea believing it was forever Russian are beginning to feel the psychological suffocation. The constant sound of explosions, the growing list of mysterious strikes, the realization that no bunker is truly safe anymore. This is psychological warfare at its most refined, turning the dream of a secure Russian Crimea into a daily nightmare of uncertainty and fear. This is not improvisation. This is a deliberate, phased master plan. It was a perfectly ordinary night over Crimea. Russian forces slept inside their reinforced bunkers with a false sense of total security. Radar systems swept the skies. Patrol boats guarded the coast. The fortress was quiet, confident, and arrogant. After all, nothing had ever truly reached the deepest sanctuaries before. But that night, something different moved through the darkness. Low. Extremely low. The FP-2 drones hugged the Black Sea waves, using terrain masking to stay invisible. They slipped between hills, followed valleys, and exploited every blind spot created in previous strikes. No loud jet engines, no warning signatures, just silent, intelligent shadows gliding through the night. Russian operators saw nothing. The S-400 batteries remained dormant. The drones flew like ghosts, patient, precise, and unstoppable. Then came the strike. The FP-2 slammed into the ventilation shafts and weak points of the underground Iskander bunker. Designed to survive nuclear war, the complex had never been tested against this new kind of precision. A muffled but terrifying explosion ripped through the mountain. Shockwaves traveled through kilometers of reinforced concrete. Inside, command systems were shredded, missiles damaged, and the sense of absolute safety was obliterated in seconds. Soldiers deep underground felt the earth itself betray them. The message was clear: nowhere is safe anymore. At the same time, another coordinated strike unfolded at sea. Ukrainian sea drones hunted down FSB patrol boats and Grachanok-class vessels, the elite maritime security forces guarding the Kerch Strait. One after another, these guards of the bridge were destroyed in rapid succession. Flames lit up the night as expensive Russian patrol craft sank beneath the waves. The maritime corridor was being cleared, not for a direct assault on the bridge, but for something much smarter. And that's when Western analysts realized the truth. The Kerch Bridge itself may no longer be the real target. Heavy pause. Tension peaks. Russia was no longer facing isolated attacks. They were facing a systematic dismantling of their entire Crimean system. At the heart of Russia's entire position in Crimea lies one single fragile lifeline: the Kerch Bridge. It is not merely infrastructure, it is the peninsula's survival artery. Everything Russia needs to sustain its occupation flows across that bridge: fuel, ammunition, reinforcements, spare parts, and even food for hundreds of thousands of troops and settlers. In wartime, it also serves as the only reliable escape route. If that artery is severed or permanently threatened, Crimea does not become a fortress, it becomes a trap. Ukraine understood this perfectly. That is why they have poured relentless effort into evolving their naval drone fleet. The latest generation of Sea Baby drones now carries warheads up to 2 tons, powerful enough to critically damage even heavily protected bridge pylons. These are no longer experimental toys. They are upgraded, autonomous maritime predators capable of striking at night in rough seas and surviving layered defenses. Each new version is smarter, stealthier, and more lethal than the last. Russia can repair the bridge after a strike, but they cannot repair the constant grinding fear that it could be destroyed at any moment. And that is the true brilliance of Ukraine's strategy. They don't need to destroy the Kerch Bridge immediately. They only need to make Russia and every Russian living in Crimea understand that its destruction is inevitable. The psychological message is devastatingly simple. Leave while the bridge still exists. Every new drone attack, every near miss, every video of burning patrol boats reinforces the same chilling realization. The clock is ticking. Slowly but relentlessly, the transformation is happening. Crimea is no longer a mighty fortress connected to the motherland. It is becoming an isolated island, militarily vulnerable, logistically fragile, and psychologically suffocating. A peninsula turned prison. Russia had stationed over 32,500 troops in Crimea, preparing for a classic ground invasion that never came. They dug trenches, laid minefields, positioned armor, and waited for Ukrainian Marines to storm the beaches. But Ukraine never played that game. Instead, the war arrived from the sky and the sea, silent drones, precision strikes, and invisible threats that no amount of dug-in infantry could stop. The massive garrison became strangely useless. Heavily armed soldiers stood guard against an enemy that simply refused to fight on Russia's terms. This was the ultimate strategic mismatch, an army built for 20th century warfare being dismantled by 21st century innovation. Every time Ukraine destroys an S-400 system or damages a critical radar station, Russia faces an impossible choice. They must either leave the gap exposed or pull advanced air defense systems from other critical fronts from the Donbass, from Kursk, or from Moscow's own perimeter to plug holes in Crimea. Each replacement drains precious reserves and exposes new weaknesses elsewhere. Crimea has become a massive resource black hole. The more Russia tries to defend it, the faster it bleeds manpower, missiles, money, and attention. A supposed strategic asset is now consuming the empire's strength from within. Russia is now forced to defend everything at once. The Kerch Bridge, the remnants of the Black Sea Fleet, dozens of radar sites, air defense batteries, supply depots, command centers, and even civilian areas. They must protect thousands of kilometers of coastline, maintain logistics under constant threat, and manage the growing panic among troops and settlers, all while fighting a land war hundreds of kilometers away. The system is overloaded. Commanders are exhausted. Resources are stretched to the breaking point. What was meant to be a position of strength has become a strategic nightmare of simultaneous vulnerabilities. Crimea was no longer functioning as a fortress. It was becoming a trap Russia could no longer afford to maintain. This is no longer the war Russia prepared for. Massive armies, heavy armor, and static fortifications are losing their dominance. In their place, a new era has emerged, one defined by precision, innovation, and relentless attrition. Cheap, intelligent drones combined with asymmetric tactics are dissolving traditional advantages of geography and scale. Technology is making even the strongest natural fortresses vulnerable. What once required entire divisions can now be achieved by small teams operating in the shadows. In this new reality, Ukraine has completed one of the most remarkable transformations in modern military history. From a nation brutally invaded and fighting for survival, it has become the architect of next-generation warfare, a master of turning weakness into lethal advantage. Crimea was supposed to symbolize Russian permanence, an eternal trophy, forever locked under Moscow's control. Today, it is becoming the clearest symbol of strategic erosion. Ukraine is no longer trying to storm Crimea. It is systematically teaching Russia a much harder lesson, that one day this peninsula may become impossible for them to hold at all.